and Zoom. It's wonderful to have all of you with us today. Our intimate group, our usual, and so many others have joined on Facebook and in the Zoom chat. We are delighted to have all of you with us today. And we want to get started with just, embracing the fact that we're in the last month of the year. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? 2020 is in the last month of the year. And I know some people are really, really excited about that by itself. They're fully excited. Good morning. Good morning. So many of you, we talked about it last week and the previous week before, and the previous week before that, where we have talked about personal transformation, professional transformation, community transformation. And today, yes, today is about national transformation. And we have a wonderful guest who is well able to engage around that conversation. And those of you who may have missed our conference earlier in July, listen, you missed a treat, but you can always go back on Facebook and have a look at it and see what's happening there and what happened there with those 11 dynamic speakers. And, these conversations are really coming out of that. And although this conversation today is the last one in this particular series, we continue again next year in January on personal transformation, professional transformation, community and national transformation with different guests who we're able to really glean from and path and follow their path and learn from their lives. So if you have a brother, a sister, a mother, a grandmother, some friends, some aunties, some uncles, you really, really want to get them on board today. Anybody, your godchildren, your godparents, whomever you would wish to call, who, if you want to share, start a watch party, feel free to do all of that in these few seconds as we get into the questioning and talk about national transformation. As a reminder, the word transformation speaks to change and doing things differently and shaking things up and watching and learning from others who are doing things successfully and keeping track of what works and letting go of what doesn't work. And 2020 was that year, was a year of great pivoting and agility. And we really, really had to keep track of what wasn't working so that we can make the relevant adjustments to seize what would work and what was working. So when we're talking about national transformation, you would be talking about at a national level, a governmental level, businesses and regulatory bodies, making sure that we have operational excellence and making sure that we have improvements in our economic enablers and making sure that we are improving the standard of living for the citizens and taking the nation forward. So we have a dynamic and yes, a brilliant guest in the person of Jeffrey Beckles. Now, Jeffrey Beckles was born in historic Chippenham, as he would love to say, at a time when it was just priceless to be in a community. And it was just something that gave him the values that has gotten him this far. And I mean, I would dare say that he's an alumnus of NCA, Nassau Christian Academy. He's so proud of them. Oh man, you guys need to give him some sort of honorarium because he talks about you guys so much. And of course, of the College of the Bahamas and the PGA School of America, I tell you. And he is a consultant par excellence. And his background has afforded him many opportunities to work at a national level. His commitment to national development and his focused leadership and his successful career has led him to be appointed to the immediate past president of the CEO as the CEO of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce. And now Jeffrey Beckles is the managing director of Island Pay and doing a phenomenal job with that already. So with all of these accomplishments though, on a personal level, Jeff believes that the best contribution that a person can make is that contribution he makes to his family. And that is such a critical element and such a wonderful idea. Join me, please welcome Jeffrey Beckles. This is our virtual clap, Jeff. So delighted to have you. So delighted to have you.
Thank
So
you.
we want to get your thoughts and wonderful insights on national transformation. And I talked a little bit about your abbreviated bio, but tell me, how would firstly you describe your journey into getting into this place to be able to speak on a national level? And more so, what has been the country's journey to national transformation in your view?
Well, thank you, Siobhan. It's great to be here. Good morning, everyone. It is a great day here in the Bahamas. And where else can you have a fall morning as beautiful as this? And to be able to wake up with no snow, no sleet, no ice, and our COVID numbers are going down. So this is a great place to be in. So it's good to be with you. And let me just answer the first part of your question in that, what did it take for me to get here? There has to be in everybody's life. We know that there's a purpose for everyone, and we get that. But in addition to that, one has to have a drive. One has to have a vision for his own life or her own life. And we talk about following dreams and all of that, and that's great. But you must also be prepared to understand for yourself, where is it that I want to go in my life and how am I going to plan to get there? Avail yourselves to as much information as you could about that destination, that thing that you want to achieve, that objective, and be mindful that it's not one giant step, but it's going to take a series of smaller steps. And I like to wrap it up by saying this, using this analogy. Life is a series of stepping stones. You just have to be careful not to build a permanent structure on it because it was only designed to be a stepping stone. And so it means then that at every phase of my life, I kept in mind where I wanted to go, but wherever I was, I sought to learn the lesson in that moment. What can I learn from this experience? What can I learn from this interaction that I can put in my back pocket and keep walking? Because one day out of seven, that lesson I learned on stepping stone number 7, I may not need it until stepping stone number 28, but at least I had it. And so it really starts with a vision that one would want for his life. And that's what I did. And I took every opportunity that I had to wherever I found myself, I tried to find a lesson to be learned. And I took that lesson, tucked it away, and I kept moving. On a national level, wow, that's a loaded question, right? We have made some progress over the years in our national development. I would like to categorize it as being slow but steady. I think you will find that there's great agreement that the Bahamas is a gifted country, tremendous talent, great exposure, tremendous education. In fact, we have broadened and deepened our educational experience globally, so much so that there are few countries with a population our size that has the global experience and education that we have. All that being said, though, we have been making slow and steady progress. Would we have liked to have been better and further ahead in our development, in our national development and national transformation? By all means. But there are several keys to that, Siobhan, that are going to be important. One is that we will find ourselves, and we must find ourselves, becoming more national oriented, nationally objective oriented. What are the things that we need to do to make the Bahamas better? We don't think about we think about those things, but we only think about them in terms of either our political or emotional disposition, which renders us, very limited in our capacity to contribute to the larger question. So for me, I think one of the things that I'm hoping that we can see as a country is that when we see ourselves as Bahamians, when we talk about being nationalistic, when we talk about national development, when we talk about national transformation, it is how we look at the country and how we set reasonable objectives for our country. How do we measure them, but outside the prism of politics? I think if we were to be able to do that, I think we could make some significant progress.
Boy, you said it right. Outside the realm of
Yes.
politics. That is very, very profound because when we look even globally, it's very difficult
Yes.
to see any space right now where national development and national transformation is being
Yes.
discussed outside the realm of politics.
Right.
you know, and it's just used as a tool
Mhm.
in many spheres at this juncture, but it affects so many people, which to your point is why it's so important to do it outside the realm of politics. Now, how would you describe to this point your contribution to our national transformation?
Wow, I've had the wonderful privilege over the years of being able to contribute in several spaces. You spoke briefly about one that is very near and dear to my heart that I believe that is fundamental to any country's progress, and that is, firstly, my ability to contribute to a strong family life. We often talk about the state of the country, right, and state of affairs, and what solutions we need to find. And yes, we can hire more police officers. Yes, we can change government administrations, et cetera, back and forth, back and forth. But the truth is, one of the foundational pillars for strong community life is family, strong family. And I've made that a priority intentionally in my life
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that I look after my family, but I also lead my family. I nurture my family. And we need the men in our country to do just that. Because if we don't do that at the foundational level, it's not going to happen. I say men because not to disparage women in any way, because there are women who do a great job as home leaders. But the truth of the matter is, if we're going to father our children, we should have the courage to take care of our children and take care of our wives. Why? Because out of the family come community dwellers. Out of the community dwellers who come from our homes come the church dwellers. Out of the church dwellers who come from our community, who come from our home, comes the country. The same people get elected to politics, the same people
Yeah,
become your pastors, the same people become your
yeah.
business leaders. The point is, all of them came from a home. And so, if we can strengthen the home, we could see greater national growth and progress. And then the other opportunities that I've had was to be involved in national level, at a national level as an advisor and as a consultant, as a contributor. We more of us ought to be able to get involved in national conversations. When I did work as a consultant with the Ministry of Tourism, the Marine Operators Association, IDB projects, at the NSA, as a chamber CEO, and now as a managing director in the private sector, where we are investing in our own country and investing to make our country better. These are all part and parcel of national contributions. But I also want to say this: we don't need titles. And I want to encourage everybody listening today. You don't need a title to be a contributor. What we need is the courage and the will. And I believe that wherever you occupy space and time, you have the ability to make a contribution. And I want to encourage people to do that. And I had a conversation recently where somebody said, well, why don't you consider running for politics? We need more people like you. I don't know if that's the answer in and of itself. What we need is more people with the courage to get involved, right?
That's good.
Because if you look at it backward, the people we elect, they come from among us. We don't import them from another country, and they are from among us. However, as the government goes, it defines the people. So when we complain about, for instance, when we complain about an administration, this administration, last administration, the next administration, truth of the matter is we're complaining about ourselves.
Wow.
Why? Because at a national level, we are the employer. We are the ones to be served. If we constantly let the roles be reversed, then we are going to leave national development to people with titles,
Wow.
people with positions, people with wealth, people who have influence, when in fact, all 400,000 of us who live here have an opportunity to be involved in national development. Yes, everyone has a different role, but when I understand the value of what it means to live in a democracy, the value of being able to have a voice, the value of being able to vote, the value of being able to participate, then I realize I don't need a title to be a contributor to national development. You can start contributing to national development just by the way you live at home, just by the way you do your job, just by the way you conduct yourself when you're out in the public space, just by the way you interact with Bahamians and tourists and the like. You are contributing to national life. The challenge is we don't see those areas as contributors, contributing opportunities. We
Mhm.
see them as, oh, well, I'm just a citizen. The people who have titles and elected are the ones who contribute to national life. And I am praying that we would change that perspective because we
Wow.
need to.
So that is so powerful because it starts, I mean, even the progression of the conversations, we've gone from personal to professional to
Mhm.
community to national. And you are supporting that with understanding that it starts with one.
Yes, yes.
Uh, and you're full of insight. I
Mhm.
want you to talk about that courage piece. Now, before we actually got on air, you were talking about eagles and
Right.
chickens.
Mhm.
And I mean, that courage, what you said about having the courage to move forward, they are among us. We are a part of
Right.
the day.
Yeah.
Talk about that eagles and chickens to get us to that place of courage to step forward.
Let me start by using an illustration. I had a conversation about maybe 2 months ago with a very senior level leader in the country who made a statement that was just simply just wrong. It was bad. It was ill timed. It was incorrect. And there was a conversation about, well, who's going to speak to them about it because they're an influencer. And I said, are we really having this conversation in 2020? If the statement was inappropriate, if the statement was wrong, if the statement wasn't representative of who we are as a people, why is there a discussion about who should speak? We all should be speaking about it. And so at the end of the day, I spoke with the gentleman, and we had a very good conversation. And he said, thank you. 2 days later, he calls back and he says, I want to say thank you again. I said, but you did 2 days ago. He said, yeah. He says, but you had the courage. You had the courage to tell me. You had the courage to tell me, even though you didn't know how I would react. He says, the fact that you had the courage to tell me and the desire to call my attention that I needed to change my attitude and change my behavior and change what I said and think about what I say before I say it, that in my book counts for a lot. And I said, wow, isn't that amazing? Listen, there are two sets of people in life, those who are chickens and those who are eagles,
Yeah,
right?
male and female. I mean, we have male, female, chicken.
No, only two kinds of people. Yes, we know there are males and females, but as we develop in life, only two rows: the row of chickens and the row of eagles. And people every day, I have to decide for myself: am I going to be a chicken today, or am I going to be an eagle today? I often give when I speak to groups, and I often give a very simple analogy. And I use the chicken and the eagle. And I often say, I will give you 7 adjectives that are ascribed to chickens. And here we go: fried, baked, stuffed, barbecued, grilled, steamed, stew, or sauce, right? Now, if you think about those 7, 8 things I just told you, what comes to your mind? A meal.
Mhm.
Somebody is going to eat that chicken.
Yes.
Mark it down, right? Now, conversely, you will never find those adjectives being ascribed to an eagle. Why? His attitude is different, or her attitude. Their disposition is different. Where they hang out is different. You will never see if you see a photo with an eagle and a chicken sitting side by side, one thing is for sure: the eagle is dead. Okay?
Oh, that's
Somebody
so
shot
good.
somebody shot him. They just don't hang out. So in my life, I have had to go through a series of processes that help me to develop the attitude of an eagle. People will throw rocks, but guess what? If I fly high enough as an eagle, they can't throw a rock at me.
Yeah.
People will
Yeah.
criticize. They criticize in groups. Well, guess what? Where I hang out as an eagle, ain't no gossiping going on, ain't no backbiting going on, ain't no yesterday conversations going on. Why? The air is clean and it's not fouled up. It has people just like me. So it allowed me, Siobhan, to have the opportunity at every point to decide whether I am going to be an eagle or a chicken. Every person on this call, every person in this webinar, every person who will listen to this post today has an opportunity to live every day, either in the construct of an eagle or the construct of a chicken. It is a daily choice. And so that is where courage comes. That
Wow.
is where the desire comes to be different. You want to soar? Yes, soar higher. A chicken has wings. Yes, they have wings. And the conversation one day was had between a chicken and an eagle. And the eagle said to the chicken, look, how is it that you just keep hanging out around here and you're a bird and you have wings like I do, rah, rah, rah. And the chicken says, yeah, but they told me I couldn't fly.
Wow.
But the eagle was like, but you can fly, you have wings, right? And the story goes on to where the eagle spends so much time trying to get the chicken to lift up his head and realize you can go further than being somebody's meal, right? But the chicken says, I'll sit right here. I'll wait for Farmer John to come throw me out some corn tomorrow. He's going to get up at some point and I'll eat. The eagle says, I need to leave. And he went back to his perch where he can see life in front of him, where his head was up and his eyes were forward, as opposed to the chicken whose eyes are right here looking down, hoping that he finds an extra piece of corn or piece of bread that he missed in the earlier feeding. There is a difference. We can be eagles if we choose to. Just too many of us who decide to be chickens.
Wow. Oh my God. I have to listen to this again and again. This is so good. The question in the chat is, are you going to be a chicken or an eagle? Choose to soar. Listen, as you spoke, when you talk about that view from way up high, it allows you to see more. It also speaks to vision,
Yes.
that takes you from where you are and where you really want to be, where you see the nation as being. So let's talk about the vision for the Bahamas, because we have to know where we want to go in order to be able to chart a path to get there.
Mhm.
So talk up to me about vision, please, Jeff.
Well, let me start by answering you with the first line of our national anthem. What does it say? Everybody knows it, right? But we don't practice it. It says, lift up your head. Okay?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yes.
Just think about that for a moment. Lift up your head. And it tells you where? To the rising sun, right? Now, if you think about those two lines, what happens when the sun rises? The sun represents warmth, yes. It represents growth, right? Because nothing grows without the sun. So the writer of our national anthem made a profound declaration to us. He says, listen, Bahamas, lift up your head to the
Mhm.
rising sun. Why lift up your head? Because if you don't lift up your head, you can't see where you're going. You could
Right.
have vision all you want, have vision. But if you don't lift up your head, the vision becomes a moot point. So the Bahamas, though, has been toying around with this idea of long distance future planning for a long, long time. We started it, we stopped, we start, we stop, we start, we stop. If you look at successful entities, successful countries, successful people, they always start with where is it that do I want to go and how do I plan to get there? That is the hallmark of what a vision says. So you see it, you lift up your head so that you can see it. And then as you see it, because you're visualizing it, you're beginning to figure out as you move your feet. That's why it's called March on Bahama Land, right? As you move your feet,
Mhm.
you have this vision in front of you, but you're learning as you go and you're adjusting as you go. Sometimes it's going to rain. Sometimes it's going to snow. Sometimes it's going to be windy. Sometimes it's just going to be simply hot and dry. You can't stop moving. Why? The vision is there to guide us to where we want to go. If you're on a boat, picture this for a moment, and you want to go east, and the wind is blowing from the northeast, right? You don't take your sails down. What you do is you try to figure out where I'm going and how I could use today's wind to get me. It may not take me directly there, but it can help me, and I may have to go around some extra miles, but I'm still, what do I have in my mind and in my sight? I still have my vision. The Bahamas' desire and need to be more visionary, okay, in not just in our politics, but in terms of where do we want the Bahamas to go? Where would we like to achieve in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? That is the conversation that we need to be having. And that, my friends, is an inclusive conversation at every level. At every level, every Bahamian can get involved in that, right? If we don't, we've looked at what we have achieved in 47, 48 years, right? Well, where's the conversation that says, what have we learned? What do we need to change? What
Yeah.
do we need? What did we do well? What did we not do well? That honest conversation needs to be had on a regular basis so
Mhm.
that if we are going to still achieve that vision, whatever that vision may be,
Mhm.
we now know I've we do SWOT analysis in our
Oh,
individual lives and in our countries,
oh, yeah.
right? And in our companies rather, sorry. We need to do that as a country, and we need to encourage that kind of a thinking. So yes, I believe, Siobhan, that the Bahamas needs to cast a vision for itself, not just a vision for the next 5 years, but we need to cast a vision for 50 years. And then in that vision, we need to be able to establish measuring components. Where do we, how do we assess where we are in our progress toward that objective? And I think once we start doing that, I believe you'll not only see the narrative change, but I think you'll see people get excited about being in the Bahamas.
Oh, that is so good. Oh, I don't want this to end, but I can see the time, man. This hour goes by
Right.
so quickly,
Yes,
Jeff.
it does.
Now, there's another dynamic around businesses, and I know you've been in that world for many, many years. How and what is the role of the SMEs in our national transformation?
Wow, don't get me started on that one because I'm an SME and small business advocate, and I believe very, very strongly in the role that small business plays. If you look at today, what's happening in today's environment with this pandemic, right? When most of the major entities around the world, most of the major companies are closed, furloughed, shuttered. Look right here in our own country. The larger employers have been closed now for almost 9 months. Well, who have we been relying on to carry the economic load? The
Mhm.
small business community. Okay. And I believe that one of the things, one of the great lessons coming out of this COVID experience has to be the fact that we as Bahamians take a second look at the role and the value of small businesses and begin to ensure that we have policies that serve to strengthen the ability and the arm of small businesses. We talk about sustainability and resilience and continuity, but the truth of the matter is we don't have an ecosystem that does well in supporting small businesses. Yes, we've started some new things, but the question is going to be, what is our strategy to ensure that there's a robust environment where small businesses can not just survive, but thrive 10, 15, 20 years down the road? If you look at the average lifespan of a startup or a small business, right? Small business startup, it's about 3 years. Well, I want to be able to ensure that we can work on getting funding for startups and we can work at getting lower interest rated loans for small businesses. But the truth of the matter is, giving them money is just but one small component of their future success. What do I mean by that? We also have to make sure that we close the educational gap. Okay? Because if your mortality rate, if you're going to only live for 3 years, that's not a very long time. So we have to assess what are those needs of the community, of the small business community, and one of those is education. We learned that in the post-Dorian environment. We're learning that as we go with this pandemic. So I believe that we must do better at focusing on creating an environment, an ecosystem where small businesses can actually thrive. And that means everything from education and continuing education. And small businesses, let me say to you, small business owners out there, if there are any of you on this webinar today, do not underestimate the power of continued education.
Wow.
We are working and living in an environment where the world is our business uh, landscape, not just the Bahamas. So
Mhm.
continued education. So yes, funding is important, education is important, continued education is important, and also ensuring that our policies serve the need of a strong, resilient small business sector.
Now, you said a mouthful, and I saw the chat start to really go just now. one person talked about the family islands
Mhm.
in terms of the role of the family islands in the national development. I want to come back to that education piece
Right.
and let you unpack that small business piece a bit more. But tell us about the family islands and the roles that they can play.
The family islands have been perhaps the most hidden and underused asset we have in terms of economic development in the Bahamas. We've not served them well at all. In this COVID environment, one of the things that we had hoped for was that if we can get us collectively, right, to work more collaboratively on ensuring that our family islands remained COVID free or COVID minimum, right? You realize the advertising and promotional advantage we have over every other regional tourism competitor. If we could get Auckland and Crooked Island and St. Salvador and Exuma and Long and South, North and South Long Island and Eleuthera and Bimini and the rest of our gems that, that are such a precious value resource to us, remaining COVID free, who could beat that?
That's true.
Okay, who could really beat? We would have an astoundingly vibrant, brand new tourism product to take to the world, unlike we've never ever seen, ever seen. And so the value there is tremendous. Even in this COVID environment, look at the amount of annual travel to family islands just from the city of Nassau alone.
Mhm.
And look how much economic activity was halted. We couldn't travel to Auckland, we couldn't travel to Bimini, we couldn't travel to Grand Bahama, we couldn't travel to San Salvador, Eleuthera, anywhere else. A lot of that money stayed in Nassau, didn't get to those islands. So those islands represent to us one of the most life-changing economic opportunities for Bahamians. Take a look at it this way. Before, for a Bahamian to get involved in the tourism sector, he had to have millions of dollars or to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to get involved. Well, not anymore. You don't need that amount of money. If you for under $100,000, you can build a couple of Airbnb units and build them at a very quality level, and bang, you are in the main tourism sector doing something that most people around the world want to have today. Why? Tourism travelers today don't want the big anymore. They want a secluded place where they can go with their families and hang out for a week, 2 weeks at a time and chill out. So the opportunities are tremendous. And by the same token, opportunities for support services and then opportunities for agriculture and
Mhm.
fisheries. We still haven't even begun to look at those areas today and apply modern day technology with safe, responsible environmental practices to determine how best we can yield this arable land that we have. And we brag about this arable land for many decades. Well, let me ask you the question. What's the point of having a nice fancy car you paid $50,000 for, leave it in your driveway just for people to drive past and say, whoa, boy, Becca's bought a nice looking BMW or Mercedes. Isn't that a lovely car he has? You gotta drive it.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, Jeff, if you went into agriculture, you know that's another huge topic. And then the digital transformation and how that impacts our national transformation is where I want to go next. I know you would have been on a
Sure.
webinar talking about digital transformation, and which was really good. Tell us how that synergizes with national transformation, please.
Well, let me just make this one quick comment about agriculture. The biggest challenge we have right now in the Bahamas is food security, right?
Yes.
And just look at the many opportunities that will avail itself to Bahamians if we truly embrace that. So let's talk a little bit about digital transformation and the value of it to us as a people and as an economy. The world is moving at warp speed to become a digital landscape, period, right? Countries are moving, they have been moving for several decades. The Bahamas has also been involved in that digital transformation conversation over the decades. We've not been moving as quickly. However, Dorian taught us some very valuable lessons about our vulnerabilities, right? And now the pandemic is further confirming those vulnerabilities. And now you find everybody scurrying at almost every level to ensure that we can try to close the gap so that we can digitize this country. One of the things that we are doing at Island Pay, where I'm the managing director, is we are engaged in that process. We are engaged in it at a national level. Why? The degree to which the Bahamas moves quickly to national digital transformation will greatly determine our ability and capacity to be an active participant in the global village, right? Uh, Secondly, we must also recognize that education is a huge component. Yes, we're going to be focusing a lot on how we get businesses ready to be operating in a digital world, but guess what? We need an educated consumer in order to achieve that success in this new business model and business environment. So it's a careful balance between the two. We're seeing it in education, where we're scurrying to try to deliver education on digital platforms. The fact of the matter is, Siobhan, that we must begin to convert the Bahamas quickly. Cash is going to become obsolete. Writing checks has already become obsolete. We now have the San dollar, where we're digitizing our Bahamian currency. This is the future. It's not the way of the future. This is the future. And so again, it provides tremendous opportunities for Bahamian entrepreneurs to get involved in the digital space, because it's not all about whether you know technology or whether you're an IT specialist or not in one of the various fields. It is also looking at the other evolving opportunities that are needs that are coming out of this evolution, and figuring out how I can best meet those needs. So at the end of the day, the Bahamas is under the gun to ensure that its digital readiness is up to speed with the global partners. Now, I'll say this lastly. In the post-Doran environment, we found that those entities in Grand Bahama and in Abaco that were affected were greatly hindered by the fact that the vast majority, almost 87% of those businesses that were affected, didn't have a digital plan to recover. Their information was backed up nowhere, right? So they struggled. In the Doran environment, in March, when the country went into a national lockdown, 47% of businesses had no capacity at that point to do anything digital.
Wow.
That's a serious issue for us to face.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now December, many companies are making progress, and we celebrate that. However, the consumer also needs to be given some serious attention. We need to educate the consumer. What is digital transformation? What is digital currency? How does digital operating in a digital environment work? It's not just for business, it's for everyday life now.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jeff, I must have you go a little bit back to that agriculture, because that, whilst you said that is the number one challenge
Yes.
that we're facing, right? Because I see in the chat, someone was saying that they're learning so much, and they were talking about the educated consumer and all of this, which you're saying is just so rich.
Yes.
Talk to us about how we can tap in more to address this number one concern from a national level.
Okay. Well, it comes to a couple of things. One, there has to be a national commitment to agriculture, right? Developing that, not just from the perspective of feeding ourselves, right? But we need to do that with a view of exporting as well, right? Back in June, I was a part of a regional heads of government conversation about food security with regional countries, ministers of agriculture, ministers of finance, etc. And the number one concern regionally was, well, what happens if Canada and the United States decide not to export food to us? What do we do? And there was a quiet pause in the room, because 80 to 90% of everything we consume, we import. But yet, the Caribbean as a region has the ability to feed itself and to export to the world, but we're not doing it. We're just not doing it, okay? I read in one report, the Dominican Republic by itself has the ability to provide agricultural food supplies to supply the entire Caribbean by itself, certain products. The point is, if you roll that back and ask ourselves, where and how can we do this in the Bahamas? First of all, there needs to be a national commitment from a policy level to our agricultural sector. Secondly, there are Bahamians who are willing and ready to, to embrace the agricultural sector, not only in food production, but in animal and livestock production, right? We consume more chicken per capita in this country than most countries 10 times our size, right? So why aren't we looking at modernized ways of producing, of growing healthy chickens? An emphasis on healthy, okay? Because there's a lot of trash out there being perpetrated as healthy chicken. Why aren't we looking at pork? Why aren't we looking at lamb and mutton production? These are areas that are extremely accessible and the need is great. If you ask someone today in this chat, what is the number one demanded meat in the world? Put that in your chat as a poll question today. And the person who gets the answer right, I'll give them a $50 gift card from Island Pay for Christmas, okay? What's the number one demanded meat in the world? So when we get to the fruit and vegetable component, then the livestock component, then we need to take a look seriously at our marine resources, our fisheries and our lobster and our conch and all the other marine resources we have. How do we, from a policy level, through that vision we cast for agricultural success, now parlay into opportunities where Bahamians can get involved? Because guess what? It's not our grandfathers and our fathers who are going to be farming anymore. It is their children and their grandchildren who will apply modern day technology,
Yeah.
best practices, safe environmental practices, and be able to execute a robust and a very, very, very resilient agricultural sector. So we need it from a national level. Let me ask you this. A lot of people in this chat have learned more about their own capacity since they started a backyard farm since March, and they shocked themselves. Now they realize, whoa, I could do this.
It's true.
You see the picture in my background? That's my yard, right? And we grow almost everything in our yard, okay? And we've been doing so long before the pandemic arose. The point is, we also have to do a retooling, and I want you to hear me and hear me well, of our mindset. For many decades, we have taught Bahamians fishing, agriculture, livestock are beneath our dignity. That's for the guy who can't graduate from school as an A or B student. We have to change that mentality. Because guess what? If you don't eat and you can't eat, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have. You can have more degrees in an oven. If you can't eat because there's no food, your degrees can't get you food. We have to change what we've been telling our people. Farming is not beneath your dignity. Agriculture is not beneath your dignity. Raising livestock is not beneath your dignity. If you believe that, go ask the Tyson family, of whom we buy chicken all around the world. It is not beneath our dignity. There's no disgrace in farming and agriculture.
So, Jeff, and I know everybody on the call and joining us live, we want our backyard to look like that backyard.
Well, it goes back to some of the things that you asked me earlier. Let me tell you, what gets me a yard like that? Commitment, hard work. And trust me, I work hard in my yard, right? But it's also my getaway. After they then beat me up at work, and after I have to sit in an hour and a half to traffic to get home, I could go in my yard, get my hands in the dirt, plant something, cut some trees, trim some trees, plant some trees, give away some trees, and I could go take a shower and feel like a human being all over again.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think COVID really has taught a lot of people that you need to develop some sort of food sustenance plan from the yard that you already have.
Right.
So here it is. And I know some questions. I see so many comments in the chat and so many questions coming up for you. And I still have questions, but
go ahead.
I want to turn it over to Lawanda Vanni. I know some questions are there in the chat group. And even as she opens up her microphone and her camera, I want her to table some of the questions for you. And as you do that, Fanny, thank you so much. Yes, please take a sip of water because we 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 are close to the hour, but it is so much to unpack. You know, from a national perspective, right? You talked about what are some of the key lessons and learnings, and you said that's what the conversation needs to be about,
Yeah.
right? And you actually started to say what are some of those key lessons and conversations. You know, they're still answering your question about what's the most popular meat in the Bahamas.
I see all of this, and nobody's gotten it right yet, by the way. Um, yeah, nobody's gotten it right yet.
Okay, so when you have to tell us what the answer is, please don't keep us in suspense.
Someone said fish. I see beef. Pork is the #1 demanded meat in the world.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
you think about that. Pork. Go down to Brazil, Argentina, Panama, Colombia, and see the business they're getting in. They say the world wants pork, we can produce pork.
Wow.
Bahamians eat a lot of pork, all right? But the point is, we need to be looking at what does the world need, okay? 400,000 people, yeah, it's a nice community, right? But the fact of the matter is, we ought not to just limit our view of what the Bahamas needs. Include it, but don't limit it to what the Bahamas needs. Look across the way, look in the region, look around the world and ask yourself, what does the world need? Let me give you a quick example. We love chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate. We love to go to Switzerland for chocolate and all that other good stuff, right? Do you realize if the Caribbean region were to stop exporting cocoa to Europe, what's happening to the chocolate sector? It'll take a nosedive. Where do they get their cocoa from? They get it from our region. Okay? Look at the impact we're having on the world. Anyhow, questions?
So cocoa and chocolate. Fanny, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, good morning.
Morning,
We
man.
have a few questions coming
Sure.
in, and one question I saw in the chat. This person is asking, why are we so caught up on government leaders and the government itself? It brings so much bureaucracy. What part can we play?
Oh, wow, loaded question, but here's a simple answer. And so put on your shoes and your belts, right? Because the reality of it is this. I said earlier that the government we have is a reflection of the people. And we need to think about that soberly, okay? Because we have this tendency to believe that because we elect people, one, that they know everything, right? And so we expect everything from them. And then when they fail us or disappoint us, we get vexed and we go through the same cycle over again. What we have to do as a people, though, is we have to look at who we elect, not party, people, okay? Set the expectations and the demands before the election, okay? Rather than doing it post-election. Because if you do it post-election, you got to live with what you got. But if you were to have the hard conversations, if we were to have the hard conversations before the election and ask tough questions, demand reasonable, sensible, practical answers from those who seek to run for government, I believe that it'll change the perspective. Because if I say to you, you knock on my door and want to talk to me about offering yourself as a candidate, and I say, oh, okay, you represent this and that. Oh, okay, you must be good. No, 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 no. Ask that person the hard question while they're in your yard and see if they can come back. If they come back, it's worth having a second conversation. And so we have to change that. And then remember, we've had a historical reputation for how we have influenced our people. We have forced our people to believe that the only way forward is to rely on government. That is not true. That is not true. Government plays its role, but they are not the cure-all to life in no country. And I think we need to change that perspective. So it's not so much the government, it's the people like us who vote and the process that leads us to how we vote that needs to change.
Awesome. Next question coming in. We need educated consumers, entrepreneurs, etc. When does the training begin? which institution or institutions, or who will be responsible for undertaking this project?
Short answer is you. Think about that for a minute. Institutions play a role, and I get it. School is great. Tertiary education is great. But we as individuals, first of all, in the broader context, we need an educational revamp completely, end to end. There's no doubt about that. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, that responsibility lies squarely on your shoulder as an entrepreneur. You must ensure that you go and find the education you need. You must go and do the research for yourself. Nobody's going to give it to you. So as far as the consumers are concerned, consumers are now beginning to realize on a smaller level, and I'm sure we'll get more and more of it as time goes on, the value of research, finding alternative options, looking at product labels, figuring out what's the best product. We, for a long time, have been really dependent on somebody telling us something and believing that is so. I think we have to become a people who says, I hear you, but think about this, and challenge those things. One of the things that we can do very, very, very quickly is just simply go do some research. You know, we all like to go to Google for the weather. We go to Google for everything else, except let's go look and see what it says. Let's go look on some of these websites. Let's search, let's research. So I agree with you on the educational component. By and large, on a larger scale, it's a total revamp, but we must also seek to educate ourselves. No one institution can be held responsible because they play various parts and in the whole. But I'll sum it up by saying this, that don't underestimate either the value of life experience. Life can educate you it can be harsh sometimes, but don't underestimate that. And then I think on a base level, we need to give serious consideration to changing the people we hang out with, okay? We hang out too often with people who can't advance us intellectually or experientially, right? Think about this. Most of the conversations we participate in are retro conversations. They talk about stuff from yesterday, last year, year before last, 10 years
so
ago,
good.
15 years ago. How many people in this chat have conversations with people that are futuristic, about tomorrow, about what could be? That's education too. Because listen, my wife and I will not apologize for this statement. We don't share our lives with people who don't share our values, period.
Wow, that's so good. Jeez, that was like a drop the mic moment.
Yes, and that's a repetitive theme too that we've been seeing in our conversations.
Right.
Other people talking about, you know, surround yourself with those people who are going places and thinking about things and thinking about ways in order to advance you, themselves, and others.
And one caveat to that, surround yourselves with people who are going somewhere, yes, but you better find out where they're going.
Right.
Right? Because a lot of times people mistake busyness for progress.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. To piggyback off an earlier question in reference to those government officials and so on, you told us to ask those hard questions, but a follow-up question also came into the chat asking, what are some of those? Can you give us a few of those hard questions that we should ask those persons seeking political office?
I'll give you a couple of questions. I'll give you a couple of quick questions. One, ask them what they believe. Okay? Ask them about how they really feel about Bahamians, and ask them personally to tell you what their plan is, what their vision is for the Bahamas. It'll stun most of them. They'll tell you they can get back to you, right? If you can't tell me what your vision is for the Bahamas, right, it is highly unlikely that you could get elected and go to the House and figure out a plan for the country. Those are basic conversations. It's not very technical. It's not very complicated, but a person's values are important to me. Tell me what your values are. And then after you tell me what your values are, the little that I know about you, I'm going to say to you, but then you don't live, you either live by them, by what I've seen as your example, or I'm afraid, ma'am, sir, that's really, I hear your values, but that's not the way you live. That's a serious question, because we're going to trust that same person with wishy-washy values of life to go into an elected position and all of a sudden become converted into someone with strong values. It doesn't work that way. Ask them about their views on our economy. Ask them about real, not just job creation. Ask them about their views about Bahamian participation and ownership.
Oh, that's
Those are
good.
some of the things you can ask.
That is so good.
Because
Okay.
I'm so tired of hearing people talk about, well, we created 1,000 jobs or 10,000 jobs. No, 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 no. That's great. People have to work. What are you doing about creating an environment where Bahamians can have active participation and ownership? That is a greater question.
As we start to wrap up the question and answer segment, one last thing. What are 3 key points, 3 main things that we can take away as it relates to national development? 3 things that we can do in order to advance our national development.
Very quickly. One is you have to look at your mindset and make the adjustments. You have to change your attitude, adjust whatever attitudes you need. Secondly, you must be prepared to be eagle-like in your mentality to get involved. Don't be afraid to speak, but speak sense. Don't just talk the talk. I mean, we get enough radio shows in this country to last a lifetime, right? Don't just talk because you have a mouth. Be constructive. If you can complain, offer a solution with your complaint. Okay? And then thirdly, you and I should begin today to model what we expect to see in our countrymen.
Man, I tell you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beckles, and I would like to turn it back over to Siobhan at this time.
Oh, I am thrilled to take it back over. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Vanny. I can't believe it. It's been an hour already. Jeff, you need to come back. Oh
We
my
should do
God.
this again. It was really a pleasure. Yeah.
Oh, thank you all so much for joining us on Facebook, on Zoom. Thank you for your phenomenal engagement around the conversation today. And that just speaks volumes of the fact, to your point, Jeff, that people want to be involved.
Yes.
And they see the need to be involved. I see people just writing awesome conversation, great information, great learning that they have had. And I just want to say thank you so very much, Mr. Beckles. I know you in tremendous, great demand. And I guess, you know, you talked about busyness not being progress, but you are definitely a progressive individual in all senses of the word. You're a progressive person. And really, we thank you so much for extending your time, extending your thoughtfulness, extending your insight, and sending your foresight to this community today. I know that this is one of those conversations that will be viewed thousands and thousands of times over the course of the next week. So thank you all so much for joining. And Jeff, we look forward to having you again in the new year.
And it's a pleasure to join you. And just for those persons who took the time to participate, Siobhan, I'll still send you those 2 gift cards, and you can give them to whomever you wish on compliments of Island Pay, and you know, 2 $50 gift cards, and you can bless somebody this Christmas holiday.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Jeff. And thank you for those active participants in the group. We will contact you. Please make sure that you've registered. And once you've registered, we will have your name in our database and your contact details, and we will reach out to you. So until we see you again next year in 2021, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a successful, productive, prosperous New Year. Thank you so much for joining Arise today. Thank you, Jeff. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great day.